welcome to another edition of Motorsports Today, live on a Monday on TikTok, and it is a special episode. It is episode 200. Thank you to everybody who's been along for the ride. We got to episode 100 last year. We got to 200 in just 1 year. If it took us 2 years to get to 100, so great that we have continued to make all this progress. Got a lot of fun coming up. Just 10 days time, Tropper and I will be shipping off to Phoenix for the NASCAR Championship to give you coverage of that. So a lot of fun stuff coming up, but we got a fun episode for you today. Again, every episode, Mondays, 7 to 8 p.m. live on TikTok, Fridays, 12 to 1 p.m. on WRSU.org. Every episode archived Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on the web, motorsportstoday.net. Find us on the socials at Motorsports Today. I'm Eddie Kalegi. We got Tim Moore here. He's got a prop that we're going to get to later. We got TCB. And, of course, we got Adam Tropper, who I somehow spotted before we went on air had different glasses on than usual. And he didn't even realize that he was wearing different glasses than usual. So that just shows how well we work together, because I know you so well.
It really does. Episode 200. That's what 200 episodes does to someone, and much appreciated. I love that we've made it to this point, and thank you to everyone. But for the glasses, I know that's going to come up, so let's straighten that out to begin with. I am in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where our home of Rutgers started Motorsports Today this weekend. Normally I'm at Columbia or back on Long Island, but I'm visiting a friend here, and I am in my friend's basement right now. But I brought my sports glasses because, we want to throw around the football, have some fun, but I got to be protective. Turns out, in that case, I also had my spare glasses that are the same prescription. So I'm wearing these like nothing happened. You could tell the lenses are bigger, but seeing it in the camera, first thing Eddie noticed. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I run upstairs and I realize I've been wearing the spares all day. These are the normal ones. This is an extra, so good job, Eddie. But once again, you're right. It shows the chemistry that we have built over 3 years of this, 200 episodes. And all jokes aside about the glasses, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have everybody here. And I clocked that, Tropper. I just did. I'm used to those same glasses. And then you looked like the guy who abducted Alvin and the Chipmunks in the movie with the big frames. So I was like, all right.
Well, you know what? More power to you for calling me out. At least I can have the good ones on air now.
At least
Tropper, did you check the locks to the basement, by the way? I'm just wondering, because you may never leave New Brunswick for all we know. You can do every show down there from now on.
Hey, trust me, this basement is fine. It actually acts as one of the bedrooms, so legally it has to be safe with the locks, so let's not worry about that.
So whether you were watching...
got a bed.
So whether you were watching from a restaurant, a bedroom, a basement, doesn't matter. There was NASCAR, there was F1 this past weekend, so let's take you through what you might have missed with our pit stop. We'll start with Formula One, where the big drama of the weekend happened on Saturday because there was a sprint before the big race, and we had talked about it. Tim had projected turn one, lap one at Coda, there was going to be something that would go down between the McLarens of Norris and Piastri, but I think Tim was talking about Sunday, not Saturday. A collision in the sprint takes them both out, takes out Nico Hülkenberg and Fernando Alonso as well. Then there was another crash. All told, 6 cars got damaged in the sprint, but that worked out for Max Verstappen. He won the sprint, then won the pole, then won the race. Norris and Leclerc duked it out for second throughout. Oscar Piastri ended up in fourth. But the big story, Verstappen maximizes on points again, and with just 5 races left in the season, he is only 40 points back of Oscar Piastri, who now only leads Lando Norris by 14 heading into this weekend's Mexican Grand Prix. We're going to get to F1 in the second half of this show. Definitely a lot to break down from that incident on Saturday. NASCAR Cup Series, last super speedway race of the year, Talladega. There was a big-ish one, but nothing too crazy. There was a crash in stage 1, a hard hit for AJ Allmendinger. Took way too long for the safety team to get out to him. Chase Elliott, though, big damage in the crash, now essentially in a must-win situation heading into Martinsville, and things didn't go much better for his Hendrick teammates. There was a crash with 2 to go. Chris Buescher spun from the lead. It set up overtime, but a strong restart for Kyle Larson and William Byron on the bottom. They were 1-2 on the inside at the white flag, but Kyle Larson ran out of gas on the back straightaway. stacked up the inside line. With help from Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe surged to the lead on the outside and ended up clearing his way to the bottom. Then in the tri-oval, William Byron spins out off the bumper of Carson Hocevar. He ends up 25th, Larson 26th. Briscoe gets his first career super speedway win and punches his first ever ticket to the championship 4, joining his teammate Denny Hamlin. Bell and Larson both above the cut line by more than 30 points. Byron, Logano, Blaney, Elliott, all basically in must-win situations heading to Sunday at Martinsville. That's our pit stop. Let's get into it, guys. NASCAR Cup Series, Talladega. I thought a decent super speedway race. Certainly wasn't as good as Daytona back in August or Atlanta back in June, but it served its purpose. I'm glad there wasn't too many huge crashes, but there was some gridlock. There was the issues, as always, with the next-gen car at the super speedway, but there was lead changes. There was some interest. There was some intrigue. I'll leave it at that. Let's start with the finish. It's so funny because I talked about this on the show way back 3 weeks ago, and it was the complete opposite, where I was talking about how Toyota completely fumbled the bag and allowed Chase Elliott to win, and you can't allow that to happen. 3 weeks later, the opposite happens, but I'd say at a far more consequential time, and now leaves Hendrick in a very realistic scenario where if Ryan Blaney wins at Martinsville like he did last year, they might not have a dog in the fight in the championship 4, which is unbelievable given the fact they had Larson and Byron both at the front on the final lap, and it's not like there was some big crash that took them both out, and yet they end up finishing 25th and 26th. Tim, I'll go to you first. I mean, we've had some questions about Hendrick Motorsports pretty much this whole run through the playoffs. They haven't shown a ton of speed. They kind of stumbled their way into the postseason when we got through the summer stretch, and then they end up ultimately in the spot. I don't know what to really make of this team right now, but just missed opportunity after missed opportunity, things that haven't been their fault, like Byron at Vegas and Chase Elliott this week, but the circumstances are clear. They're in a bad spot heading to Martinsville.
Yeah, I mean, rather Kyle Larson advances or not. And by the way, Martinsville hasn't been the most friendliest to Kyle Larson at all in the past. I think for Hendrick, you just look at it and it's like, man, I mean, if you think about it this year, truthfully, the first Talladega, they really weren't that fast. Of course, Atlanta, Chase Elliott goes on and wins. And Daytona, I mean, they always, when it comes to speed weeks, I guess you could say always bring fast race cars there. But the second Daytona didn't look good at all. So for Hendrick to come out and just kind of show again, I would say, goodish speed, but not good enough to control a race and still have a chance to win and to still make mistakes where it's just like they take themselves out of it because of rather things outside of the driver's hands or just simply not being able to take a push. I mean, that all plays a factor. And there for Kyle Larson on that last lap, running out of gas, is what it is. Cliff Daniels doesn't typically make mistakes, right, in terms of strategy, but that's the risk you take when you short fuel these cars and to try to get every inch out of it. For William Byron, I mean, yeah, just unfortunate situation. You get turned coming to the line, but at the end of the day, it's risk versus reward. And with Talladega being in the round of 8, you have to be so careful. And by the way, too, I will say this. For Chase Elliott, right? Obviously, we know he was in a hole going in because of what happened at Vegas. I don't know how I can be upset or angry at Chase Elliott. What else could Chase Elliott do in that scenario? Austin Cindric just loses it trying to slow down for the crash and wipes him out. Chase Elliott would have likely missed that crash if Austin Cindric doesn't make contact with him. So I can't even be upset at the 9. So any of that is directed. I mean, the 48 has engine issues all around, speed-wise for Hendrick, I would say. And with something that's supposed to be their strong suit are the bigger tracks outside of the mile and a halves. To me, those cars were not good enough. And yet again, it was another day where we had the Talladega where the Fords and the Toyotas are just doing circles around them. I mean, I thought, Eddie, remember when I said start of the week 2, I said, hey, the Fords, right? I said they were going to pull some big strategy that was going to pull them out the hat. The Fords weren't even together on strategy throughout the day, and yet they still executed better as a manufacturer. The Toyotas, they seem the best of the strategy of the three manufacturers, and they found ways to put themselves in positions throughout the day. So I don't know what it is with Hendrick. I don't know if it's the fact that the communication between manufacturers is still not where it needs to be. But for them, they have been playing from behind since the Coke 600 this year, and they continue to play from behind. It's like one good week, two good weeks, great. And then they're back to where they were. It makes me worry for Martinsville because, like you said, the last couple of years, they have not had the speed there. And you can't bank on just an average day for Kyle Larson being enough for him to advance if Ryan Blaney or Joey Logano show up with this ginormous speed and win a race. You need the best when it comes to Martinsville next week.
You really do. Now, Tyrell, I think it's interesting that the one car that ran out of gas at the front was Kyle Larson. I know he was towards the front of the pack, but to see a miscalculation from a Larson Cliff Daniels team on fuel like that is just so shocking, and I think just continues to reiterate that point that Hendrick is just not functioning at the way that we typically expect them to at this stage of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you think of Cliff Daniels and Kyle Larson, you think of Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson. Like, they almost go hand in hand. The way how they interact with each other and just the way how they run their races and how when they win races, they dominate. But not very often do you see Cliff Daniels make a mistake like this. And you hate to see it because, honestly, in my opinion, I think that was Larson's best super speedway race he had ran in like forever, since maybe he was in the 42 car and got wrecked at one point. But he was up front all day. He got stage points, which is why he's plus 36 above the cut line right now. And to be having the best race of your career on a super speedway and get to the back straightaway and run out of fuel is heart-wrenching for that team. Absolutely heart-wrenching for them. And I hate it for them because Larson was running great. Now, on the other side of that, the 24 Byron, he's kind of really been mediocre throughout this whole playoff season. And I really feel like I felt like he was going to just blow away and he was going to win like two races and get into the final four. But it just has not been that way, as Tim said, and everyone has been talking about it since the Coke 600. They've just been struggling, the whole organization as a whole. For him to get wrecked coming into the Tri-Oval was just devastating for him. And he did such a long, slow slide too. It was just so upsetting to see for him. But looking forward to Martinsville. If I remember correctly, last year, Chase and Kyle Larson were running 1-2 before Blaney just came storming through the field and ended up winning that race. So there is a glimmer of hope that they could potentially run good, but I don't see it. I really don't. I still just see Blaney getting in, and I don't see any of the Hendrick cars getting in at this point. Chase has to win, obviously, to get in, and Larson could point his way in, but I don't know. I don't see it happening for Larson.
So, Tropper, your thoughts on where Hendrick currently stands there?
So I'm probably going to be reiterating some of the prior points, but I saw a stat earlier today. I don't remember who it was, but it was on Twitter. And basically, this is the worst performance in terms of finishing results for Hendrick Motorsports since 2013. No one finished in the top 24. Yes, they were running better with a half a lap to go. Larson was in contention. Obviously, the fuel comes into play. But if you're looking at the results, that is a morale killer to literally have your worst organizational day in over a decade in the round of 8 when you need it most. And Toyota, they've won 5 of the 8 playoff races. And realistically, let's be honest, should have been 6 if they didn't botch Kansas. So Toyota is firing on all cylinders. Hendrick just isn't. They have top tier drivers. No one's arguing the talent, especially if Kyle Larson, the emote's been an off year. Chase Elliott's proven to kind of still be in the hunt a little. Like, I have more faith in them than I actually did a few weeks ago, even though the cars aren't running well. But I just don't see the future for Hendrick Motorsports, at least for the end game of this season. I do think it's possible that one of them will win, but we've talked about it extensively on the show. Martinsville in the spring, Hendrick Motorsports is almost always there. But since realistically, Jimmy Johnson in 2016, and besides Chase Elliott's win in 2020, fall Martinsville has not exactly been the strong suit for Hendrick Motorsports. And I just want to say, for Talladega, for Toyota, I honestly expected the Fords. We had our picks on Friday, Eddie. We thought the Fords would go all out. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Chris Buescher was running there at the end too. So my picks were on track. But I gotta say, I'm really impressed with Toyota because we always say at super speedway racing, for strength in numbers. And for the longest time, granted 2311 is now more established, but for the longest time, Toyota didn't have the numbers. It was almost impossible for them to work together. So to see them have this strong of a performance where Chase Briscoe now gets his first super speedway win is really cool, but it also solidifies that momentum that JGR especially, they are the ones to beat. Right now, we're most likely looking at 3 JGR cars in the Final Four, which would be the first time since 2019. And I don't see any reason why. And TCB, you made this point. We aren't going to get all 4 Toyotas in Final Four, but there's a pretty good chance, even statistically, 75% chance 3 of 4. But I would even say higher, realistically, that Toyota and more specifically Joe Gibbs Racing will win a championship this season.
Yeah, I mean, they are right there to get 3 cars in. And Tyrell, your prediction was pretty close. But let's talk about Chase Briscoe for a second, because he gets this win. As Tropper said, a lot of this you got to give credit to Toyota. Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace, they were very helpful to that 19 throughout the race. Pretty much everybody was helping the 19 and the 20, besides Denny Hamlin, because I felt like this race, Denny Hamlin truly coasted because he was into the Final Four and just did not want to get himself hurt in a wreck. And the Hamlin was really irrelevant the whole race. But all the other Toyotas had their ducks in a row, were in the mix. We saw the Legacy Motor Club cars even up there. But the 19 gets the win. And for anybody who's saying that, oh, Chase Briscoe, he's not a deserving driver in the Final Four, where have you been this whole season? Chase Briscoe has easily been one of the best 4 drivers in the series this year. You look at everybody else calculating all these other points, Winston standings, full season points. Chase Briscoe is right up there with everybody else. Now has 3 wins. Could have very easily gotten his way in last week at Kansas. Had to wait till Talladega. Super speedway racing has never really been his bread and butter, yet he ran those last 2 laps to perfection and took advantage when the bottom line dismantled. Got the help from Ty Gibbs, yes, but ended up winning the race. Chase Briscoe, 100% Tyrell, deserves this honor, and I think, remember, he's won at Phoenix before. He's good on the flat tracks. I don't think it's crazy to say that a Chase Briscoe championship could be happening in 2 weeks.
I totally agree. Looking back at the beginning of the season, if you would have asked me, would Chase Briscoe get into the Final Four, I'd say no. But here we are at the end of the season, and Chase Briscoe is in the Final Four. He drove a great race, I will say. He won stage 2, and he stuck around, and everything, all the cards were just, they fell in line for him perfectly. Larson ran out of fuel. I thought it was going to be a drag race between Larson and Bubba for the win. Larson runs out, swoops low. Ty Gibbs lifts, gets behind him. That's all she wrote. Ty Gibbs obviously not going to pass him. So kudos to Ty Gibbs for pushing him there. But yeah, Briscoe, I mean, I think he's the favorite going into this race because, like you said, he won at Phoenix and he's good on flat tracks, and this team is dangerous right now. If you look back in the playoffs, I mean, he dominated Darlington and just all the other racetracks. He's running top 10. So they are very, very dangerous right now, along with Denny Hamlin. I mean, they've got 2 weeks working on this car. So who knows? This car could roll out and be a second faster than everybody. And Tropper, yes. And Eddie also. 3 Toyotas are almost in just about. I don't know if Bell's going to be able to get in or not, but my prediction is almost right. Just missing out on 1 Toyota. But man, I really just feel like Briscoe could get it done. It's not even like something that's far out or I'm crazy for saying. They've got the speed. He's obviously got the confidence, and he loves Phoenix. So, I mean, it's almost like a match made in heaven. I believe he can actually become a champion.
Yeah, certainly not out of the realm of possibility. And Christopher Bell, I think, will end up being there. He has historically been so good in cutoff races, dating back to 3 years ago at Martinsville when he won his way into his first Final Four. I think Bell's going to get through.
I would say, although, just remember, last year was a catastrophe for Christopher Bell, and you can't ignore that either. As much as we'd love to say he's sitting there, he's in a safe position, listen, it's Martinsville. There's always anarchy. There's always chaos. For the record, I mean, 3 of us, in fact, you, me, and Tropper, all picked Christopher Bell to win the championship at the start of this year because we looked at the strength of the schedule in the playoffs. I think Bell's in a great position, but if what happens at Martinsville happened, or last year happens again, you never know what can happen, is all I'm saying. Because I'm sorry,
Blaney
go
went, sorry to interrupt him, but then it becomes a points battle. It just becomes Bell versus Larson. And
right, but
just,
if he's a lap down
but
and he's in the
do we really
20s,
think
he can't
Bell
pass
will?
Larson.
Maybe not, but I'm just saying, I think Bell at Fall Martinsville, with the momentum that Toyota and JGR has, is going to surpass Kyle Larson and potentially a broken Hendrick Motorsports, especially if it's only 1 point. If we're talking stage points, if we're talking speed, because remember Christopher Bell and especially Chase Briscoe this year, they have been great in qualifying. So even stage 1 points, I think that'll make the difference. I'm not saying either of them will win, but I have more faith in that 20 team than the 5 right now.
Oh no, absolutely. And again, the other thing too is you got to look at the other scenario. I mean, obviously we keep on talking about Ryan Blaney, right? But the thing is with Penske is we know they're the dominator of flat tracks. We've been talking about it all playoff long. Yet it would be devastating if none of them make it to the Final Four after talking about this dominance and pretty much handing Gibbs a championship. And the other thing is too, and I'll say it like this: there's another factor we're forgetting about next week. What about William Byron? Did we just forget that he's won a couple Martinsville races? Did we just forget that he runs typically well there? I'm not saying, again, he's going to go out there and win, but like you can't count out that 24. The only car I can count out winning, truthfully, and again, I know it sounds crazy because he's the most talented driver on the Cup field and the Cup roster, but Kyle Larson and Martinsville, other than that one accidental win that Kyle Larson can't figure out how he won, I just don't see Kyle Larson winning on Sunday. So to me, I'm just saying there's a strong case still for anybody, but you obviously at this point with the point situation, how Dega is drawn out, you simply just need to win. But for the 20 car and Christopher Bell, if you can't win again, you can't afford to have what happened last year, because if you're in a points battle with Kyle Larson because somebody else is winning, I'm taking Larson over Bell any day of the week, truthfully. Even though Bell has been in this situation more, has felt the pressure more, Kyle Larson has a championship. Christopher Bell doesn't. He knows how to perform the clutch when it matters, in my opinion. And that's the difference that could be a difference maker. But I want to say one more thing, too, because you guys harped on Chase Briscoe, right?
Yeah.
I can't emphasize this enough, because TCP said, for example, I don't think anybody predicted him to be a champion. I thought Chase Briscoe was going to be mixed, top 10, showing signs of improvement. I would have said at the start of the year, if Chase Briscoe made the round of 8, oh my God, that's a great year. It's a spectacular year. But if Chase Briscoe turns around and wins the championship this year, it's like, oh my God, what do you expect for the future with this 19 team? Because the one thing that has stood out from the rest of them this year that just stands out to me, it's the polls, right? Chase Briscoe comes out, he's a contender for pole every week. They start well, he runs well, he's able to be aggressive, and he's still learning this car. What does year 1 to year 2 with James Small look like, championship or not? So to me, regardless if Chase Briscoe wins the championship in 2 weeks, this has been an excellent year that you cannot ignore, which is why to me it's like, in a way, I don't want to see Chase Briscoe win a championship because I want to see more. Like, you can't not root for the guy because he's such a good guy out beyond the racetrack. In his situation with Stuart Haas, people want to see the underdog win, and in this case, he's the underdog when it goes to Phoenix, even with his win there.
Yeah, I would.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Tyrell.
So Tim, I have a question for you here. So you said Byron, you kind of really bet on Byron getting in. When you look back at his past fall Martinsville races, I mean, he's been running 16th to 15th, and last year he had the Chevy Brigade basically hold up for him, or he would have been eaten up. So I just want to know, like, why do you feel so confident that he'll be able to bring them as much speed as you think and really be able to point his way in? I mean, I just don't see it. I know he dominated the spring Martinsville race, but it's different.
Well, I wouldn't say exactly bank on him winning. I would just say bank on the fact that I would consider him more of a threat than, let's say, a Kyle Larson. My thing is just more the fact, again, you win at a track for a reason more than once. There's a reason you've won there more than once. It's not like, again, Kyle Larson, I accidentally, I guess you could say, fluked into a Martinsville win in his own terms and he can't figure out what he did. When you win at a place more than once, you've got something figured out, in my opinion. And William Byron, the other thing too, is you look at those past 2 instances. I mean, the scenarios, in my opinion, aren't similar to the scenarios of what this year is in the fall. He knows pointing is very unlikely. He needs a lot to go his way to point his way in. You've got to go all or nothing. And when you talk about guys too, Martinsville, I mean, the fall offs, we're going to see what the tires are going to look like. It's going to be interesting. But when you talk about guys that have raw pace, raw speed, raw potential, William Byron is up there in the bunch when you talk about these guys in the round of 8. Again, there is no doubt in my mind, other than maybe you want to argue Joey Logano, these are the best 8 drivers in this season, in my opinion, to be in the round of 8. They all have the raw speed potential. But William Byron, just for example, how we just talked about Chase Briscoe, right? At Chase Briscoe, one thing that stood out, he qualifies on pole. One thing that William Byron does better from the rest, he constantly qualifies well. And when you go to Martinsville, track position is everything. So if they have good averages, they have good track position, I'd be a betting man on William Byron if they look good when they unload this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be fun Sunday at Martinsville. 2 more things I want to get to on this race. I know Tim's got something he wants to talk about. We'll get to that in a second. But one thing I do want to talk about a little more seriously, NASCAR's got to address, everybody talks about the AMR safety team and how great it is. It's good in some sports. It's not in NASCAR. The fact that it took almost 40 seconds for the safety team to get the truck out to AJ Allmendinger when he's laying on the ground, his car's on fire, ridiculous. Took them a while too on Friday when you have a 73-year-old in a ball of flames on the backstretch. I mean, I literally put on the race and Norm Benning's on fire. I mean, good to see that he was okay. Hopefully they can get an engine for Daytona, because now that he lost his engine, cool to still see him on the track. But, you look at IndyCar and you see at Indianapolis, but even at any of the ovals, you've got safety teams out there to these cars sometimes before they even come to a full stop. Like, Talladega is the place that you need to have that addressed and have all your ducks in a row, and I feel like NASCAR has really struggled with that this season more than others, so I hope that's something that the sport looks into a bit this offseason, but just needed to get that out of the way. Tim, we've talked a lot about Chevy and Toyota. We all expected more from Penske this weekend. Cindric, of course, got collected in that crash in stage 1. We knew he was going to be a big helper. They didn't have him anymore, but they were on the bottom. And then they had Front Row Motorsports. There were other Fords, and Kyle Busch was aggressive, and he was down there. And then that lane just fell apart. Logano and Blaney lost their track position, and even with the caution, the overtime restart, they never came back into the picture.
Well, apologize. Had my mic off. You see this thing right here? You know what this is? This right here, this is a towel. Now, there's a guy that used to go on a speed channel, and he used to sit here, and he used to rub his eyes, and he used to cry, and his name was Jimmy Spencer. This right here is my Penske crying towel for this weekend, because here we go. Let's try this again. Here we go. You got me now? This is
I had you that whole time, Tim.
Oh, no, because I yanked my cord out. I yanked the mic out. That's the reason why I didn't know if you had me or not. The point is this. Okay? Penske sat here, and they had the track position. They had the opportunities. But when you go to Talladega and you are in a big situation, you need to work as a team. Why did Chase Briscoe win that race? For example, TCB gave Ty Gibbs credit. Ty Gibbs, despite the fact he had a chance to win his first career race, opted to be a teammate and pushed the 19 car to victory. At the end of the day, when you look back at, for example, a guy like Chase Elliott at Atlanta, Alex Bowman opted to not push Brad Keselowski or force the scenario and pushes Chase Elliott ultimately to a win and putting him in the playoffs. The reason why I say this is this. Yes, Penske sat there, they had the track position and so on. But when I look at the end of the race and I see Joey Logano sitting here all crying because, the 12 car won't work with me. The 6 car saving gas. Give me a break. It is ridiculous. I'm sorry. I just can't sit here and listen to this from the Penske crying, especially somebody who has 3 championships, that somebody won't work with you. Joey, you've won championships because of the system, and you've won championships because things have gone lucky your way. Now that things aren't going your way, you're going to sit here and cry and whine about the system that we're saving gas at the end of the race? I said at the start of the show, maybe the reason why we wouldn't be saving gas at the end of these races is, I don't know, for crew chiefs didn't sit here and try to put the absolute bare limits on gas as soon as the fuel window opens and everybody jumps out of gas. I mean, how many times do we watch a NASCAR Xfinity Series race where these guys are running out of gas on green, white checkers every time we go to a super speedway? So the reason why I sit here again and I give this crying towel to Penske is because I'm tired of hearing crying. You guys have sat here. You've accomplished enough at super speedways. And all you needed to do was execute as a team, yet you couldn't do it as a manufacturer from start to finish, and you end up failing miserably. It was a horrendous week for an organization that everybody expected much more of, and expected to win one of the first 2 races in this round, and yet they fell apart. And if they don't win at Martinsville, guess what? Not a single Ford will be in the Final Four, despite all this hype about how these Fords have been so good at flat tracks and all these things. And it is disappointing to see.
Mic drop moment. Well, don't actually drop your mic because then you'll yank it out again. But yeah, that's Tim Moore's crying towel that he texted me about earlier, texted Drew about earlier, and got to bring out to show the fans. But that is Talladega as a wrap for everybody. Fun weekend at Dega. Martinsville coming up on Sunday, and on Friday, Tropper and I will get you set for that. So let's pivot to open wheel. So the Oscar Lando incident happened. Now, the incident had already happened. Remember, back at Canada, they collided. But clearly, there's been some animosity. They clinched the constructors, and Verstappen just keeps cutting and getting closer and getting more and more points. And then he ends up getting the sprint pole. And then turn 1 at Coda, which is one of the wildest turns for any race car, any racetrack, anywhere, because it's hard to describe. It feels really wide and really narrow at the same time, just the way you have to kind of funnel through there. And Oscar Piastri learned that the hard way. And listen, I was on the show, and I say it's always Lando's fault. It's never Oscar. I pin this incident mostly on Oscar Piastri. Like, I understand you're trying to make ground up. He cut down to the left in front of Nico Hulkenberg, and, I mean, he moved in front of him. And people that are blaming Nico Hulkenberg, what else is Hulkenberg supposed to do there? It's more a racing incident than anything else, but if you're going to pin the blame on somebody, unfortunately, it has to go to Oscar Piastri there. It's just hilarious that happened to also wipe out Lando Norris, too. And Max Verstappen just drives away effortlessly. But, Tropper, the funny thing here is, yes, the points gap continues to lessen. It's 40 points in 5 races, which is certainly not insurmountable at the rate that Verstappen's been at lately. But remember, a lot of that is because both Lando and Oscar have DNF'd over the last 5 races to get to this point. I don't know if that's going to happen in the next 5, which is why I think for Verstappen, obviously, he was focused on running his own race, ends up winning the sprint, ends up winning the race without any real competition. He would have much rather that lap 1, turn 1 incident have happened on Sunday than Saturday, so he could have made up, 25 points instead of the 8 that he got from the sprint.
100%, but you take what you can get. And first off, I want to say I literally called this on Friday's show. Granted, I thought it would be on Sunday as well, but I literally said that this was going to happen. The 2 McLarens wreck each other out, and Verstappen is the one to take advantage. So I'm proud of myself in that regard. But with 5 races left, there's 2 more sprints, I believe. So that means there's 141 points up for grabs. You got to do a little more math to figure out between first and second how many points you can make up. But point is, it is mathematically possible. Even if I think Max Verstappen would still have to win out every race, but 40 now, even if he doesn't, if Lando and Oscar have one more incident like this, or just one of them has a mid-race, they come in 8th or something, like that should be enough. And like we've been saying, Max Verstappen is the best there is. And frankly, when he has nothing to lose and is having fun, he is the most dangerous. And I think maybe that mentality might shift a little bit now that it seems like, oh, wait, this 5th championship could actually happen. But then he's just the focused monster that he's proven to be the last 4 years. No matter what, you are getting a Max Verstappen that can take the fight to the McLarens. And it feels repetitive to say, if Lando and Oscar can't figure this internal issue out, they're going to be doomed. It's a cliche. We've been saying it for months, but it's actually happening and coming into fruition. So I don't even know if I can say that because I'm worried it's too little too late. It really is just damage control and praying that Verstappen doesn't overtake them at the end.
Yeah. Now, Terrell, I've made an observation here now since they came back from the summer break. I know Oscar won the first race out of the summer break at Zandvoort, but besides that, that almost feels like an outlier. I almost feel like ever since coming back from break, Oscar has had almost a different mentality, and maybe he's driving a little rattled because, he sees it. He realizes, hey, I'm in first place. I control my own destiny to try to win this championship. I have a realistic shot here. And it's really been ever since Lando had that DNF and Oscar ended up with that sizable gap over Lando Norris after the Dutch Grand Prix, that he's been making a lot of mistakes. He crashed at Baku in qualifying, he crashed turn 1 lap 1, and then of course what happened here in the sprint. And I mean, this weekend he was okay, but come Sunday he was clearly at the fourth best car. I mean, he had nothing for Lando or Charles Leclerc, and obviously nothing for Verstappen. I almost feel like at this point that Oscar Piastri, he's young, he's never been in this position before, he's getting a little rattled. I mean, we see it in other sports with teams that are in the playoffs for the first time, I'd say most notably like in baseball and basketball. On a first playoff run, you start not looking like yourself because you're not used to it before. And I almost feel like we're seeing this kind of thing mimicked in Oscar Piastri over these last 4 or 5 races.
You made my point perfectly right there. I think what's happening right now, I'm going to go by the top 3 here. So Piastri he's like this. The lights are way too bright for him right now, and he's just falling apart, unfortunately. I mean, you saw what happened on Sunday. And I mean, sorry, not Sunday, Saturday. Sorry. You saw what happened on Saturday. I mean, he took out his own teammate in Hulkenberg. And I think the pressure is getting to him now, along with Lando. The pressure's getting to him too. He's never been this close to win a championship before. So, of course, the lights are really bright right now for them. And it's hot. It's hot in the room. And there's a lot of tension going on. They wreck each other, and they want to know who's number one and who's the number one driver. And it's just really tough right now for the both of them. Now, going on to contender number 3, Max Verstappen. It doesn't matter how bright the light is. I mean, it could be the sunlight shine on him. He doesn't matter. He's got his sunglasses on. He can still see. He's good. So he's gaining on them because these two are basically just falling apart right in front of them. And it's shaping up for an absolutely amazing championship finish right here. And I am all for it. I am not really a fan of Verstappen, but I do want to see if he can make up these points within the last 5 races because, like I said, these two are just falling apart. I mean, I know they've got microscopes on them and like everybody's watching their every single move and they're hearing all these things about what one driver's saying about the other driver and just all the politics that are all around it. At the end of the day, if they don't get it together, neither one of them are going to win the championship. And then they're going to load up in 2026 and have to try again. And will the lights be too bright then? Who knows? But that's the future we're talking about now. They've got to put their shades on and get through this because whether they like it or not, if they wreck again next week, or if one of them finishes 4th and one of them wrecks out, Verstappen he's got the fishing rod out. He's reeling them in, just getting closer and closer. So they really got to figure it out because honestly, like I said, I'm going to reiterate again. This is going to be a very, very, very good championship finale coming up in about another 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun story and a fun ride to watch because I think it was David Croft called it like the Jurassic Park scene and that Oscar and Lando are in the SUV and Verstappen is the T-Rex chasing them. He's right there. He is right there.
Listen, can I give you another analogy? Because to me, and I'll give you the NASCAR analogy on this,
Yeah.
This is just like Kyle Busch and Brian Vickers duking it out in the Nationwide Series, and then Brad Keselowski just sneaks on by and wins the race. Like, that's the best way of pretty much describing it because it's like these two were so focused on racing each other so hard, and Max was such an afterthought that it's like they're making mistakes. It's almost like, to be honest with you, I don't think it's a pressure thing. What I think it is more of it's not a pressure of they can't handle the lights. It's a pressure of I can't afford to have such and such happen. And because I'm thinking so critically and so worried about one potential mistake, it's like, here we go. You have one ball. Now you have 2. And oh no, or I guess in a football term, right? Oh man, I had 3 and out, back-to-back 3 and outs. And oh, there you go. There's the interception, just like the New York Giants yesterday that turned the whole game around. So at the end of the day, the way I view it as is that, these guys are sitting here, they're throwing incompletions right now, and Max is throwing strikes. He's throwing touchdowns, and they're coming from behind. And next thing you know, who knows? They could be winning, 30? I don't even remember the final score of yesterday's game. I was punching things.
I'm so glad you brought that up, by the way,
Yeah.
because I was about to say the analogy was that Oscar and Lando were Jackson Dart and Camp Scadaboo, and Bo Nix was Verstappen, but
yes. So
I was going to leave it to
that's the
you
point.
first to say it, so I didn't have to put too
it's-
much pain.
The point is they're sitting there, they're running through everything, and now they're getting stopped and so on. And I guess technically Jackson Dart comes back and scores a go-ahead touchdown. And I don't exactly know who is going to be McAtomney in this situation, but either
Zach
way,
Brown.
yeah. So either way, the point is that at the end of the day,
Giants kicker went to Rutgers.
The Giants
he
kicker didn't
sucks.
even start at Rutgers. I don't know how this guy's in the league, but
It's because he's okay. So this is what I understood. Not to get into football talk, but he's the what is it? The basically how each roster can have a foreign player on their practice squad and so on. He is that player for them. So that's the only reason why he's on the practice squad.
there's not a player that plays another position from another country that.
Well, we used to have a running back, and I'm having a brain fart on what his name used to be. Everybody wanted him on the roster, but he never made it, and he doesn't play in the league anymore. So
if we wanted a Rutgers kicker, just put Adam Korsak in. But you know what? I digress from the football talk. What were we on?
So I was saying, the point is either way, it's very comparable to the New York Giants yesterday. We're just these two were so focused on each other, and one simple mistake is what's going to put Max into this championship. And I'll say it like this: yesterday is equivalent, I guess you could say, to the interception for Oscar, right? Because if you have a result like he had again yesterday at any of these next 5 races, guess what? Like he loses the points lead to Lando, which is what he's been trying to avoid. And then on top of it, like if you're getting beat and you don't win a race, it's like Max is just continuing to sneak his way in. Lando is, he's on the throat right now of Oscar, but it's Piastri's to lose. Whereas for Max, listen, Max just continues. It's an odd shot, but if Max continues to do what he does, they're going to notice and they're going to recognize when it's way too late. And again, just like last year for Lando, one mistake is all that was needed at that big run Lando had. It was one mistake that was all that was needed to end what was hope of championship run. Max is in that same area. But the difference is that Max Verstappen's Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes doesn't miss in the clutch. So you don't want to stop and just let Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady come out and win and get that one strike. You're ahead of them. Can't let him come back like the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm sure Drew may chime up there. But that's again another football analogy. But this is what it is. And Max, by the way, if he wins a championship, can we make the debate? And maybe the greatest comeback in F1 history for a championship. Because I would argue it is.
He's 100 points back at the summer break. That's far and away the most impressive comeback that I've seen. And it's very doable. It's only 40 points. As Tropper laid out, there's a lot of points still up for grabs, 141 to be exact, that you could max out on. And 3 out of the 5 remaining races are tracks that Verstappen has had a ton of dominant success at. Mexico this coming week. He's been great at the Vegas Grand Prix since that started a couple of years ago. And we all know Abu Dhabi at the end of the year is where his crowning achievement happened when he passed Lewis on the final lap to win his first title. So there are 3 tracks right there. Sorry, TCB. There are 3 tracks right there that I know Verstappen can make something happen. But there's another point I want to make to this too, Tropper. And it's the viewership case and the way the fans are perceiving this, because I think it's really interesting, because at the beginning of this season, everybody was so excited that there's new blood, that there's Lando and Oscar. And I know some people don't like Lando, but people were like, oh, there's a different team in the mix. McLaren's not just going for the constructors. They're outperforming Max Verstappen. Finally, we need a break because everybody gets sick of dominance and hates dominance. But TCB made the point, and I feel the same way, and I believe a lot of other people do too. I'm kind of rooting for Max Verstappen right now because it's so exciting and this is such an amazing achievement for him to come back. And with the way McLaren has been self-destructing, it's almost fun to see Verstappen doing this, especially when we all know how terrible the equipment is that he is driving at this incredible pace. So I can't think of like in another sport. Tim mentioned Patrick Mahomes. I don't think anybody would be celebrating if the Chiefs had started 1-5 this year instead of say 3-3 and came back and won the title. I don't think anybody's going to be celebrating if LeBron James and the Lakers had 30 wins, got into the play-in, and came back and won the championship. Maybe some people would because there's the LeBron stands out there, but not everybody. With Max Verstappen, I feel like the public view is very positive for a Verstappen comeback, which is crazy when earlier this year everybody was sick of him because he'd won the last 4 championships and nobody had put any sort of a fight against him really the last 3 years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think from a motorsports perspective. The closest I could think of is either maybe Jimmy Johnson 2016 because people just wanted to see greatness, or maybe Kyle Busch just trying to win a race now. Like, the goats of the sport that are the underdogs now. And that's exactly what Max Verstappen is. It's crazy to say that Max Verstappen is the underdog because we've been hyping him up the last 15 minutes because he is that good. But with the car he's in, the position he's in right now, betting wise, statistically, he is still the underdog for the 2025 championship. And if he pulls this off the 5th straight, like I said, I don't think it's happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if he could pull off that 5th F1 World Championship in a row, and he's done it in every which way. He had the fight against Lewis Hamilton to go down to literally the last lap. He's had the most dominant season in F1 history, winning all but 2 races, and now to be able to culminate that by coming from behind. I don't care if he never wins a championship again. Having 5 in a row in that many different scenarios could actually not even could. I think it does make Max Verstappen the greatest of all time, or at least puts him in that conversation. Like there's no debate anymore that this guy is the best to do it in that sport. The fact that we are all rooting for the most dominant, arguably boring winner in the series to make a comeback. I don't know if it says more about McLaren or Red Bull, but you have a very good point. We obviously fans want to see a great championship battle, and I think when you win 4 championships in a row, 3 of them in dominating fashion, you get sick of the guy. But if there's a fight that needs to be put up, I will respect greatness if he pulls it off. I will not feel disappointed. It's kind of like when Jimmy Johnson won his 5th straight championship. Obviously, NASCAR different than F1, but think about how many people were sick of the 48 car in NASCAR in the late 2000s, early 2010s, but they still came through every single time. And this is only going to continue to age well. Max Verstappen is only going to continue to be more of a living legend as time goes on when people look back. They're going to be mad now that he wins potentially, but then you realize that you just won potentially 5 straight F1 World Championships. And like I said, each in different scenarios. That's what impresses me the most, the versatility of each championship fight. And this is the speech that I should be having in a month and a half if he does win. But that's how monumental it would be if he can pull it off.
Yep, only 40 points. And all told, even if he doesn't come back, Lando Norris has now climbed himself back into this. And I mean, TCB, I have been so critical of Lando Norris all year. I was critical of him last year. But if he can, be the one that wins this, say Verstappen can't overcome this gap, but he does pass Piastri and he takes control of things, the narrative on Lando Norris is really going to change. And it's amazing how things can just flip on a dime like that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, if Verstappen even gets up to second, it's impressive. Like you said, he was over 100 points back after the summer break. I mean, you know what, Tropper, I completely agree with you. If Verstappen gets this 5th consecutive championship, I mean, that's just like Jimmy Johnson whenever he won his 5. Yes, when I remember that time when Jimmy Johnson won those 5 championships, I was over him. I could not stand him. I was a longtime Hendrick Motorsports fan, but I could not stand Jimmy Johnson. But Jimmy Johnson never really had a situation where he was this far back and could come back and potentially win a championship. To see this in an F1 would be monumental, like I said earlier. So again, yes, we are all going for it. Absolutely, because it's monumental. It'd be amazing. Even if he gets up to second, it's still a really good thing. I mean, just to get up to second from being that far back in F1 points is very impressive. And obviously, you know, we talked about it before. Verstappen does not have the best car. You know, after everything that happened, allegations earlier on in the season and the cheating scandals, whatever you call it. If he comes back through all that adversity to even get second or win the championship, or I mean, well, I guess third at this point could even be still on the option on the table. No matter what, it's still a pretty impressive season.
It
By
sure
the way,
is.
did anybody see the fine that Red Bull got? By the way,
Yeah, they
they
moved his
pulled
tape,
tape
right?
off the grid. Was it Piastri's or Lando's? I forget whose it
It was
was.
Lando's.
Well, that you want to talk about stuff? It's like, oh, Red Bull cheating. What difference does it make of pulling tape of from where they are in gridding? I don't understand that.
You know, the FIA has some stingy views on certain things that, you know, lead to penalties in this sport because everything's got to be so perfect in F1. But Max Verstappen wins another at Coda. I want to finish with our tweet of the week. I forgot who tweeted it, but it was something that jumped out to me. So I was watching the end of the NASCAR race yesterday, and with like 15 to go, they were doing like the blimp shot of the pack. And I was very surprised to see a back marker in the pack, and that was the 66 car of Casey Mears. Casey Mears, who's on this quest to get to 600 career starts, is randomly running double duty in trucks and cup this weekend at Martinsville so he can get to 600 NASCAR starts, and is driving for MBM in trucks, which of course Carl Long owns all these cars. And Casey Mears ended up 18th, got shuffled out a bit, then came back on that overtime restart. And the irony, Tim, because I know you've been a fan for a long time and you remember those Casey Mears Hendrick days, he beat all four of the Hendrick cars because of what a disaster that was. A fan pointed that out on Twitter.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, maybe Casey Mears can get a little bit of funding next week and maybe get a good showing for, you know, career start number 600. But I mean, from the start of the race, by the way, I mean, Casey was one of the 2 or 3 cars along with BJ that literally couldn't keep with the pack at the start of the race. And then Denny Hamlin faded to the back and they pushed her way in. Just to see that 66 car be able to run somewhat good and competitive was definitely a really good sight to see. Because again, even if they're only good at super speedways, you got to make that growth. The 78, for example, BJ, we always know is always a super speedway guy. At no point yesterday was he able to keep with the pack. The 66 and Carl Long's group, I'm happy to see when they have good races, and this was definitely a good step up in performance for them. You gotta love it. You gotta love to see it, especially when you're getting to that monumental moment for him.
It was literally the team's best finish in 5 years. So, I mean, you got to take that into account, too. But also, are we counting the truck series as part of Casey Mears' 600 quest?
Yes, because it's 600 NASCAR starts, not just the Cup starts.
Okay.
Right? That's what I'm understanding.
That's what I've gathered. It's a very random quest, but
this is what I try to understand.
So that's why I was confused.
That's why I try to understand from Declan's tweet. Is the 600th the truck race or is the 600th the cup race?
I'm confused. And then he's also running Phoenix too. So I don't understand. I mean,
no matter what, he's going to get his goal. So
listen, for not to take a shot at Casey Mears, but it made sense for Todd Bodine a few years ago. Like, yeah, you know, we're going to go chase the start thing. Pretty cool. Casey Mears disappeared for a little bit of time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Todd's still active and saying, like, Casey Mears was pretty much an afterthought after he stepped away from racing. So it's not that I don't care. Like, it's a huge, huge accomplishment. But I just think that it's more of like, there's not enough media and attention towards it. And there should be. Just because it's like, it's a little confusing on what the plan is because nobody's really communicating what the plan is for him. But if it leads to him getting more opportunities in the 66 and they perform and maybe they're a full-time team in the future, listen, I'm all for that. To see signs and growth and help build a small team get there. But I just wish we were a little bit more in the know. That's all, you know?
I wish an open team would run full time again. I don't feel like that's happening.
There'll be, hey, if 2311 loses the lawsuit.
Well, no, like the normal way, not NASCAR stripping charters away from teams. Not that way. But
just saying, like, you could have up to 6, maybe 7 of them next year.
That's happening right now. I mean, they haven't technically had their charters since July or August, I think.
Yeah, but NASCAR's putting the limitations on the numbers. You can't forget about that. That'll make the duels, by the way, very interesting. By the way, how would that even work for the duel? Well, I guess they would have to allow more cars to advance in from like the go or go homer side of things from the duels, right?
I mean, they've changed things before. They gave Elio Castroneves a spot in the Daytona 500 because he's cool. Like they'll figure something out. I mean, I would not put it past them. But I did see too, when we're back in the show on Friday, Tropper, Thursday there's another court hearing about the lawsuits. So that means we're gonna have to talk about it again.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's so fun. But
and also, by the time you're on the show Friday, you'll also know who's going to be driving the 7 car next year.
That is true. Announcement coming from Spire on Wednesday. Also, IndyCar testing on the oval at Indianapolis this week. I believe there's some like package changes that they're trying out. So curious to see that. It'll be the second time this coming year that they run the hybrid on the Indianapolis oval. But that'll do it for episode 200. Again, thanks to everybody who has tuned in for the first 200. Excited for another 200 along the way. Thanks to our producer, Drew Jua, for Tim Moore, Adam Tropper, TCB, Eddie Kalegi, signing off of this episode of Motorsports